Good.
Hi, everybody. My name is Bethany Jett, and it is truly an honor to be conducting the agent interviews for the Right to Publish Conference 2018. And I have with me here Cynthia Ruchti, Dan Balou, Bob Hostetler, and Cyle Young. And we are going to dig in to find out who they are and what they're acquiring and how you are going to be best prepared to come to the conference to pitch your work. I'm also one of the co-owners of Serious Writer, and we are super excited to get started. So we are going to start with Cynthia. If you could tell us something unique about you and tell us about your company.
Okay, the unique part, I could have chosen from so many things, but one thing that people may not know about me is that I've hiked part of the Chilkoot Trail in Alaska, despite what this looks like. I've also hiked in the desert in Utah. I've hiked in Zion National Park and in the Rocky Mountains, and yet I let my husband hike out to the mailbox to get our mail every day. So that's the thing about me. What we're acquiring at Books and Such, a literary management agency, has been around for 20-some years, 20 plus years. And we have 5 agents on the team. They happen to all be women. No offense, guys, but they happen to all be women on the Books and Such team. And the uniqueness about us is that each of us operate individually, which many do in many agencies, operate individually, but we all are under this protective umbrella of Books and Such as a whole, and the leadership of Janet Grant, which is magnificent, wise leadership. So we specialize in books that are written from a Christian worldview, both fiction and nonfiction.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for being here and taking the time. Bob, will you introduce yourself and tell us something awesome?
Well, I would like, do you think we could sing the Brady Bunch theme song?
Yes.
And I think that would be...
I'm not volunteering to be Marcia, though, just so you know.
That would be pretty awesome. I'm Bob Hostetler, and I am the newest agent at Steve Laube Agency. Also, probably the youngest, but we won't get into that. I know it doesn't look that way, for sure. But,
I'm going to mute my video just so
yeah,
the facial expressions.
And much of what Cynthia said about Books and Such is true of the Steve Laube Agency. We specialize in Christian fiction, nonfiction, you name it. Each of us, Dan is a colleague, each of us has a little different emphasis, a little different personality, but mine is to represent bestsellers and blockbusters. That's me, yeah. Oh, and I've dreamed of hiking places, so. Yeah.
Is that your unique fact?
That is my unique fact.
Dan, welcome. Tell us about yourself.
This is getting harder and harder to top as each one goes through. I'm Dan Balou with the Steve Laube Agency, and I've driven through Zion Park, and and my mailbox is attached to the house, so I don't have to go anywhere. But it's agenting is a very interesting thing. This is I'd been in Christian publishing for 30 years prior to starting as an agent, and had done a lot of different things in it. And I think I bring a little different perspective than others. My background is more on the business side of the industry. But over time, you spend enough time in the industry, you learn about authors, you learn about books, you learn about all sorts of things that are important. So I come at the business from that, and I think I can bring some value to my clients who might need more of a marketing angle or a business manager type approach to things. But so we're all trying to balance all those things. Any agent has to balance all of those aspects to their work. But I only work with nonfiction. I find that easier for me, based on my background, to handle. I think I can. I've still never been able to figure out how a novelists build their author platform, so that's why I just avoid that completely on nonfiction. But it is it's a great privileged to work with Steve Laube and Bob and Tamla Murray, who I think is younger than all of us. Bob. So you're only doing that because she's not here to defend herself. So, but,
just in case she's watching. Thanks for being here, Dan. And then Cyle, tell us about you, something unique, and about your company.
Yeah, I work with the Hartline Literary Agency. I've been working with them for a couple of years, and Hartline has, I think, five agents across the Midwest, and I represent books in both the general and the Christian market, and both fiction, children's, and nonfiction. So we kind of have an eclectic mix, and it's been a great joy learning the different parts of the market and seeing my authors find success there. And so I'm always looking for great projects they're going to sell, and that's going to be great. Interesting thing about me, last week, 10 days ago, I was in a movie with Dean Cain. So I was in the background, and it was great. Met Dean Cain and Superman, yeah. I mean, got to meet Superman. So not many people say they got to meet Superman. I met him personally, so it was really good. I got great pictures, and hopefully this is the first of 3. So I may go to the other 2 as well and be in the movies. But it was a really surreal experience to meet Dean Cain and hear Dean Cain use scripture as he was leading a small group in one of the scenes. So it was Pastor Dean Cain in the movie. So it was a different experience, but really a unique thing about me right now. Hope I don't get cut from the final.
And now you're being interviewed by Wonder Woman.
Yeah, so that works
right now.
Lasso of truth. And then what is the name of that movie for people who are watching who might want to be paying attention for that when it comes out?
Faith Under Fire. It will be available on Amazon and Netflix and those type of services. I don't know if it's going to release in the movie theater. So,
Faith Under Fire. All right, well, we're going to jump in to talk about what you are acquiring right now. And so we're going to start with Cynthia. What are you looking for?
I'm kind of eclectic in a lot of ways in what I'm acquiring, and because I haven't been agenting for all that long, but I, like Dan, have been in the industry for a long time. And like everybody here has been in the industry longer than we've been agenting for most of us. But I'm an author as well, and I've written nonfiction and fiction. So I'm open to either. My specialties are not speculative and fantasy and allegory, although I appreciate them, but I know there are other agents who are more finely tuned to the real specific differences with that genre. But I'm open to historical fiction, contemporary, but percentage-wise, very little fiction compared to the nonfiction that I'm looking for. And part of that is just because of what the publishing industry is doing at the moment. And yes, it's weird, as Dan said, about how does a novelist build a platform until the book is on the market. But for nonfiction and overall, generally speaking, my tastes are wide and varied, but I'm always looking for a different approach to timeless truths. Everybody is. And sometimes authors come to us with projects that I have seen 40 or 50 times before. And if that's the case, or if I'm very familiar with books like this that are doing really well on the market, and this is the same approach as that book, it will probably be turned down just because it shows me that the author doesn't know the market, him or herself. So looking for that different angle. The other day I was talking to someone who was writing a Christmas book and wanted it to come from a different angle, because we've heard nonfiction Christmas books from every angle there is, through the voice of the donkey, through the voice of the star. And he said, I don't think there's anything left. And I said, well, surely there had to have been a tick on one of those sheep that was at the manger scene. And then we decided that was maybe not exactly what we meant by coming at it from a fresh angle, but not with the appeal that it might have. So all of us are no doubt going to say that same thing: fresh angle, different approach, and then a strong reason why you are the author to write that book.
Thank you. That was good. And thank you for sharing what you're not looking for too, because I think that's helpful when people are trying to narrow down who they're talking to know what, but then also don't even mention these projects. Bob, how about you? What are you looking for as you're acquiring?
bestsellers and blockbusters primarily. More specifically, I guess, I do represent both fiction and nonfiction, and fiction, not sci-fi and not fantasy. That's Steve Laube's wheelhouse. Not speculative, but you know, the usual, the Amish, the historical, the romances, the suspense, thrillers, those kinds of things. But in nonfiction, which, like Cynthia, is at least currently, and probably about the time that we say these things, the industry will change drastically. But currently, nonfiction's a bit of an easier sell, and I represent across the gamut, you know, Christian living, devotional, men's, women's, those sorts of things. Inspirational how-to, not cookbooks, not poetry, not memoir typically, children's books rarely, and not middle grade or juvenile much at all. So,
fantastic. Dan, how about you? Blockbusters?
Yeah, everybody would be happy for those. You know, I think it's maybe I'm just not maybe I'm not as self-directed as some of the other folks here, but I tend to, it's sort of like an editor. I sort of act like that, where I sort of know when I see it. I can't really describe it, but I know when I see it. And one of the other things is that I'm astounded by how just by what you're successful at, you end up being sort of an expert in that. And so I've ended up with quite a number of clients who are in business and are talking about finance, and not necessarily personal finances, but just money and the value of things, relationship to your, relating to your faith, and I've other leaders and other types of things. Maybe I'm a little harder on women authors, just because there are times I just feel completely unqualified to represent somebody who, I mean, I feel like I have to have some affinity with what they're doing, and so it's hard for me to represent somebody who came through an abusive relationship or something like that. I'll often suggest, just, you probably need a woman agent for this. So it is a personal thing. It is something that it's all nonfiction that I look at, adult nonfiction. However, I am representing a couple of younger writers. One that's only 18 years old and is just, so you look for new voices, you look for new things. But I'll know when I see it, but it's hard to describe ahead of time. But I'm probably just not as smart as the other two who talked about that.
We knew that.
We knew that, yeah.
Thanks. And Cyle?
What am I acquiring right now? I mean, since I do children's nonfiction and fiction in both markets, I'm pretty much looking at anything except for poetry. I don't do a lot of memoir. Mainly just I don't read it, so I don't really, if I find something I'm just like, wow, this is amazing, I would represent it. And then, I don't do erotic or anything like that. But I would look at anything, kind of like Dan, if you see it, you know it. I really look for people that I can get behind their story, or, I look for big ideas, people that I really want to work with, or just people with very large platforms. Those three things, if I can find all three of them in one person, it's pretty much a slam dunk to work with them. If I find two of them, usually it's a good thing that I'll look into. But I'm really looking for kind of at least one of those, and hopefully more of them, if not all three, in a person. Right now, what I'm really looking for is I'm looking for books with diverse characters, all the way from children's to adult books, and that could be diverse as such as a palette of different characters, different backgrounds, and from different kind of creeds and races, religions. And ultimately, even characters that have disabilities, looking for books and stories like that. It's kind of a fresh perspective on old ones and old kind of genres that are out there. And then I'm looking for books that are written by persons of color, just to truly want an agent that'll get behind them and their project and help them find a publisher who would like to bring that to market. So that's what I'm looking for right now, specifically.
Thank you. And then, okay, we're going to jump into when the attendees are actually pitching at the conference. It's kind of be a two-parter. what should someone bring to a pitch for you? I know everyone's got different things that they like to see. And then beyond that, what are some tips or advice for when they're actually pitching? And we'll start with Cynthia.
For one thing, I think one of the strongest things that can help an author who's trying to pitch their project is to just relax, because we are not the ogres that we might have appeared to be on paper in the advertisement. Yes, you're pointing to, go ahead, Bob, pointing to who is the ogre, but among us. But really, many of us have sat in that same chair before, or we're all introverts ourselves. Not all of us, but many of us are introverts who happen to function fairly well in public. But we completely empathize with the person who's sitting in the chair across from us. And because of that, that should put an air of relaxation onto a conversation that could seem very tense just by nature of, here I am to pitch my project to someone that I hope is going to like it, like showing your baby for the first time and watching and reading the face. But to set up for that moment, I think a one sheet is helpful just for the sake of for a quick view for the agent considering, but also for the author to be able to refer back to, because he or she may not remember their own name, much less the title of the book that they're presenting in that moment. So it's perfectly fine to check your one sheet and share that, or even hand it to the agent so they can quickly get a feel for that. But we really want to engage in conversation because we need to see what's your passion for this project. Why is it a passionate project for you, whether that's fiction or nonfiction, and tapping into that. There are some other things that I would say later, if there's time left over, about very practical things to check off your checklist before you even come to sit across from an agent with your project. But those are the basics that I think would be a good starting point.
Those are fantastic. And I'm so glad you said that too, because everyone's so nervous when they pitch and it's a conversation. So that was great. Bob, same question. What should someone bring for you? And do you have advice?
Yeah, I love to see one sheets. A well-written one sheet recommends an author to me. But I also, if someone emails my assistant right out of the blue, say through the Steve Laube website, I only look at proposals, because that tells me a lot about how far along the writer is. And so I'd love to look at a one sheet and then have the option of seeing the proposal. Of course, you only have 15 minutes in most conferences, so unless you're sitting at a lunch table or something like that, so there's only so much time. But I think my preference would be, show me a one sheet and then give me the option, have the proposal ready for me if we want to go further, because I can tell, like these other folks, I could tell in just a minute or two what helpful feedback I can give you on a proposal, more so than in a one sheet. A lot of folks can dance on a one sheet just beautifully, but the proposal is a lot more challenging and says a lot more. So that would be my preference in an appointment. And a lot of it is just kind of gauging personality and just, it's a sense of, would we work well together? Do I get you? Do you get me? That sort of a thing. Are you totally insane? That's another question that I try to figure out in just a few minutes. So
that is the beauty of the one-on-one, is that you actually get to see someone's passion, like you were saying, Cynthia, and the crazy a little bit if it shows. Dan, how about you?
I'm going to take a different view of this. I agree with everything that's been said. Be prepared, relax, all of those types of things. But if you look at it from the opposite standpoint, don't show up with nothing in your hand. Don't just say, "Hey, I'm just going to talk here." That's not good. That means are you a writer or are you a speaker or something? So you need to bring something. And there are some people who will show up because they didn't want to put in the work to put together a one sheet, that they show up with nothing and they just want to talk. And I can't make any judgments. I don't know how they write. I don't know anything about them and all that. And the other thing is just, it's almost like applying for if you apply for a job, you can choose to go into that interview, really confident and very, self-assured and everything else. And that can almost be as bad as being overly nervous in it, if you're not just normal. And so, I've had people come in and trying to really impress me, like, you're in it for the money, I'm in it for the money, we're going to make this work, we're going to make millions together and all that. I'm not sure I even like you, because of the, and so it is, everything that's been said up to this point, but also don't go the opposite direction. Don't be overly confident in yourself, and don't just show up hoping you're just going to wow me with a speech, So it's be calm, bring some materials to show me, and we'll have a nice conversation.
Thank you. Cyle?
I guess my tip would be, for me, I like to see the first pages of the first chapter. I mean, I can't make any decisions without seeing the writing.
Yeah.
And I was at a conference this past weekend. I go to a lot of general market conferences, and they always tell everybody, don't bring anything, no papers, no one sheets, nothing. And then you sit there for 15 minutes and just stare at each other. And they're just telling you their ideas, but until you see it, all I can think of is this is a lot of emails I'm going to get. And I want to be able to make decisions when you're sitting there. I mean, I can tell usually by the end of a first page if I'm interested in the writing level, and then if I really want to spend time going through a proposal and seeing if everything is there for those three things I'm looking for. And so for me, bring your first chapter, even if it's not the most polished chapter, but just bring it, because you can see when something's been not edited, when it still has really good writing and really good voice with it. I mean, I think we all see enough proposals to know that. So don't not come and pitch to us, because I think we can look past the common copy editing mistakes and find a good writer and a good voice. So bring that for me, and just not be afraid of us. I think the worst part is people just sit down and say things like, this is my first pitch ever. I just started writing. And what that instantly tells an agent is you're not ready to be represented by an agent. So if you sit down with confidence, know what you're talking about, have your pitch ready, give us a paper, one sheet, your chapters. You just sit down and know that we are excited because we're looking for people to build careers with. And so that's what we're hoping to do. I know all these agents personally. They are very nice, wonderful people. And I've had people come and sit down to me and say, like, so-and-so so nice. And hopefully they do the same thing in reverse, but probably not. I know there's just good people, and not everyone at every conference is an agent who's going to be nice and treat you with respect. And the thing I'm excited about, at this conference is I know people get treated well, they get treated with honor. And so it's a safe place to come and pitch your work. And so just know that coming in, and just trust that we want to give you the benefit of the doubt, and hopefully that you're sitting down with the next blockbuster bestseller for Bob. So, yeah.
So I have a bonus question for the group. One question that a lot of attendees have is, how many copies of things should they bring? So does anybody here actually take things with them, or should they just make a few copies to show to all the agents, knowing that you're probably not going to take them with you?
I'll say, when I was an author, I was told I had to make this huge 3-ring binder and do all this work. And I worked on it for weeks, and I never used it once. So I would say, if you're getting one sheet, bring some copies. If you have your chapters, bring some copies. Whatever you have some copies. Because if I'm interested, I want to take it with me. Even though most people say they're going to throw it away in the plane, if it's a keeper, I'm keeping it. I'll take it in the plane. I'll find a place for it. I mean, I had a lady sit down with me this past weekend who went to my website, watched my videos. I guess that's my tip for me. I have videos on my website, tells you what I'm looking for and tells you how to pitch me. And she did all her homework, sat down with all the details, all the numbers, everything. She made it easy. It is exactly what I'm looking for like 5 companies in the general market. And I'll probably sign her by the end of the week. I mean, we're having great conversations, but she knew what she was doing, and she had the paperwork for me. It even had a letter addressed to me, so she was ready. So just be ready and have enough copies for the people you want to give them to.
Yeah, and I'd say it's your chance, the appointments and the lunch table or the dinner table. These are your chances to show how good your preparation is. And so I've encouraged writers to come with a query addressed to a magazine editor that they want to pitch to, or and so you want to think through before you get there. Don't wait till you get there to strategize who you're going to meet with. Use the website or the brochure to figure out, here's my top choices. And I would say take a copy for each of them. I like to have the hard copy because I may throw it into my briefcase and read it later that night, rather than waiting for you to email me later. So, and with the volume of emails, I think for everybody here, the volume of emails that we get is greater than the number of one-sheets or proposals we might see at a writers' conference. So you want to stand out from the crowd rather than be one of the crowd.
And if I could have a contrary counterpoint to that,
no,
it's obvious, it's obvious that Bob and Cyle lift weights. So their luggage can be that heavy. I need room for my shoes. So
amen.
So I prefer to look at, I think, have plenty of copies, several copies with you, one for each of the people you want to pitch to, obviously. And I may or may not take it with me. I may or may not read it in my room that night. I can't read it on the way home because for the Right to Publish conference, I drive home, which would make you think I had room to take home paper proposals, but I don't. I personally prefer to receive the proposal, to dig in deeper by email at home when I can really put that time and effort into it. That's just my personal preference. That's the kind of thing you'll find out when you have your appointment with the agent or the editor, is you'll find out what's their preference, and we all will have our differences that way. So for me, I prefer to see it and look at it, and like others have said, I have to see some of the writing, not just what's your concept, but I have to be able to see some of the writing. But then if I invite you to send your proposal to me by email, that's an honest invitation to send me the proposal, or to send me a mini proposal. Sometimes I ask for that to see if there's any point in going even deeper with that idea. So, but another thing that had been mentioned, which is so important, is if you come to an agent appointment and you don't know anything about the agency because you haven't studied their blog or their website, if you haven't read even the material in the brochure or on the Right to Publish website, you're coming at such a disadvantage, because the 15 minutes that you'll be spending, that you have, is an opportunity that you don't get at every conference. Right to Publish is one of the conferences that has this wonderful array of lots of different people that you can have appointments with. And if you come unprepared just because you think you have a great idea, go a little bit farther than that. Find out what these agents and editors, what their tone is like, follow them on Facebook. Figure out what even what their personality is, to see if that's the kind of personality you want to build your career with.
And can I just say, one of the things I don't like, and maybe this is just me, I don't like it when a conferee sits down and turns their laptop towards me and gives it to me and says, "Read this," because to me that's like digging in someone's purse. I don't want to touch it, and it's just, I want the paper. Give me the paper.
So print out the paper.
Yeah, print it out for me, please.
I don't mind if they do that, but most agents I've talked to do not like to look at somebody's computer. So
yeah,
I would advise don't do it. Even though I like to do it, I wouldn't say do it for anybody.
Of course, it could be fun if somebody hands you their laptop to just to poke a button and say, "Oh, was I not supposed to delete that?" just to see what.
You're really selling yourself there, Bob.
Oh, yeah. Oh, sorry.
This is super valuable. Dan, do you have anything to add, or do you like to take papers with you, or do you prefer to get them via email?
Well, since my office is about 500 feet from where the Right to Publish conference is, I could carry anvils back. But please don't send anvils.
How many spare bedrooms do you have, Dan?
Well, actually, you'd sleep down in the basement, but okay. You'll be in the basement. So, I think a key thing is to show up. You can bring whatever copies you need or whatever you think you need, but the most important thing is you need to bring a notepad that gives you your action list that you need to jump on right away. Because all of us, every agent has had this happen where we've asked for something and it never comes, or it comes 6 months later. If we ask for something, we really expect to see something in the next few days. And so bring whatever copies you need, but also bring a pad of paper that writes down or takes a card and send this to Dan by Friday, and all of this. Go back to your room, send it then. Always strike when the iron's hot for that. So that I think is most important, because to wait a month or 2 or 3, it's pretty much over at that point. I mean, we may not even remember the conversation. At least I won't. But yeah, you have to be prepared, but make sure that you follow up. That's almost as important as anything else we've talked about here today.
That's great advice. We've got one more question, and we're going to start with Cynthia. When you get an electronic submission, as in a proposal, what part of that proposal do you start with? Is the marketing section, the overview, the chapters, the comps, or do you read all the way through straight down? We're just curious.
I start with the writing. And if the writing intrigues me and shows me that this author has either something brilliant or has a unique way of expressing this topic, then I'll go back to the beginning. Of course, I skim when it first comes in. I skim and I read the query that is essentially the email that they sent with the proposal attached, and remind myself of who that person was, or the conversation that we had together. But then, and that's another point. If they put in the subject line requested at Right to Publish, something like that, that always rises to the top. If we've met you in person, it always rises to the top. And but then for me, I look at the writing because I've seen so many people lately at a variety of conferences who are excellent at speaking their concept and their idea. They have it down pat. Some of them have just shy of memorized their pitch, and they've polished it. But then the writing itself can't support what it is that they've said with their mouths or in conversations. So I start there and then go backwards.
Excellent. Bob?
I read the hook. Actually, I read fiction and nonfiction proposals slightly differently. For a nonfiction proposal, I read the hook, and then I go straight to the marketing, the platform section, and if that's non-existent, or it just if it shows they haven't made any progress, then I don't go any further. But if I'm not discouraged by the hook and the marketing in a nonfiction proposal, then I'll go to chapter 1 and start reading. And then if that first page or first page and a half encourages me, then I'll go back to the beginning and start reading all the way through. In fiction, I start with the hook and then go to page 1 of the manuscript. And then, because the marketing, like Dan said, the platform is a little bit different in the fiction world. Mm-hmm. But it's always the hook, and then in nonfiction, hook, platform, page 1. In fiction, it's hook and page 1.
Fantastic. Dan, how about you?
It just shows how everything is different. There is no one answer to this. I always, with nonfiction, because that's what I primarily work in, I'll look at the concept, just kind of read the first couple paragraphs of just the general summary, but then I'll go to the author bio, because what I want to know is this person qualified to write this book? And because with the Christian aspect of what we're doing, if they're writing on some deep theological thing, but they're, they've taught Sunday school for 40 years, but they're a pharmacist, I'm sorry, it doesn't matter what your platform might be. It's not connected to the it's not connected to the concept. And so I actually look at the general summary or what the book is generally about, and then I go to the author bio to see if there's a match there. Then if it is, then I go check the platform and check some of the other things. And sort of once all those filters are met and all those boxes are checked, then I'll start reading it. But because there's no point if a person basically isn't qualified to write on a certain subject to actually continue reviewing them.
Excellent. Cyle.
I would agree with everyone. I do fiction. I do chapters first. That's where I go. And of course, I usually read the hook and the cover letter. But and then nonfiction, it'd be same bio and platform. You know, if they don't have that, there's not a lot I can do. I mean, if the hook's great, I might be able to work a way around it. But those are the way I do it. So.
And you know, at least in my experience, it's often amazing to me how people invest such good writing effort and talent in their chapter and not at all in their author or marketing section. But those need to be really well written, you know. Got to have a good lead even in those sections. So and I'm often amazed at how relatively little attention is given to the writing in those sections.
I too think that's one of the biggest lessons that's come out of this discussion of the four of us, is that every element of it needs to be strong, because every agent is going to look at it first at a different part of that. So, and if you're writing a humorous nonfiction, but the proposal elements of it and the summary and the chapter titles and all that has no humor in it, that's a disconnect that an agent will notice right away. Or if you're writing, as they say, the writing of those the first couple of chapters is really strong, but you haven't been able to express it in a sentence and in 2 sentences and in a paragraph and distill it. And if you don't know your target audience, if you don't understand what the takeaway value is, whether it's fiction or nonfiction, and those elements of the proposal are weaker, that's reason enough to wonder, can I as an agent afford the time that it's going to take to bring this author to the place where he or she needs to be, so that it can have the best chance of reaching the publishers, which gives it the best chance of reaching the readers.
That's wonderful. I just want to thank you all again for taking time out today to do the interview. And I want to thank everybody who's watching. This was great information, such practical advice before pitching. So we will see you guys at the Right to Publish conference, and we hope to see you at the conference as well in June. Thanks, everybody. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.